Hello there! Today I'm going to talk to you about sugar shacks, which is a very big Quebec event, and how it's now being Islamicized. I'm going to share that with you today in this video. So how we're going to go about this is I will explain to you what a sugar shack is in case you don't know. If you know, you can skip a couple seconds ahead, where I'm going to go into why it's being, how it's being Islamicized and what's happening there. And I'm going to address the menu and also the bigger picture of all of this, because why is it a big deal, right? And I think if Muslims, and I'm hoping some Muslims are watching this, I think that the Muslims, you're going to see, if you're consistent, that you would actually agree with me. If we look at the demands that Muslims have made, you should technically agree with me by the end of this video. So anyways, here we go. Alright guys, so what is a cabane à sucre, which translates to sugar shack in English? It is a big, like a big shack in the forest where you would go, and it's surrounded by maple trees. And in March and April of every year is when the maple syrup production begins. And they'll put little taps in the tree. Now I'm sure, I'm not a maple tree expert, so I'm sure that they have an actual name, but they put a little tap in there and they put a bucket underneath it, and the sap will drop into it. And that is the sap that they're going to use to boil to make the maple syrup. And as well as the maple syrup, there's a whole big meal that is planned around that in the cabane à sucre. So you would go for dinner or lunch, and it's a big deal. It's a really big deal in Quebec. So if you're in school, they would take you on field trips there. And there's a horse-drawn carriage rides in the snow. There's often little animals and petting zoos. I've seen those a lot. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal in Quebec, and part of the menu there is a lot of the Quebec foods that we find on our tables across the year, like throughout the year. But they're kind of all reunited under one maple syrup orgy, almost. It really is. So, okay, so when you go there, let's go through the menu, because then I'll go through how the Islamification is happening. You'll understand a little bit better, I think, if I go through the menu first. So a typical menu that you would find at a sugar shack, where you would go and eat with your family or your classmates, and it's very rustic, by the way. I forgot to mention that the decor is very rustic. There's often a big dance floor, and there's going to be musicians from Quebec that are going to come up there and sing and play very traditional Quebec music so people can dance. So on the menu, typically you would find tourtière. Tourtière is a meat pie, and it's often a mix of ground beef, ground pork, a couple spices, and it's in a pie shell. Baked beans, and in French we know those as fèves au lard, and fèves au lard means lard is pork lard, that's what it is. Maple ham, sausages and maple syrup, and the sausages are made out of pork. You'll know why I flagged the pork. You probably already know. Croton. Croton is a ground pork that is mixed with onions and spices, and you would normally spread it on bread. They'll often have things like coleslaws. I remember like seeing relish, little things like pickles on the table, beets, those kinds of like little things that you can have as a side dish. And of course they'll have pea soup, and pea soup often has the bigger chunks of like this really good crispy yummy ham in there. Really, really good. And the desserts, often you'll find maple syrup dumplings. If there's any Quebecers watching this right now, you would know these as grand-père au sirop. Crepes, often they are fried into like lard. Sugar pie, oreille de Christ, which literally translates to ear of Christ. and they're crispy pork rinds and maple taffy on snow. So that's the one where you have the clean snow outside, and they would have arranged it in a nice table, and then they would come and pour the very thick maple syrup that they've already done, and when it hits the snow it becomes in a taffy-like consistency. You would take your popsicle stick and you would dip it in there and grab the whole chunk and eat it almost like a little lollipop, but a little softer than that. So anyways, I hope I've done justice in describing this cabane à sucre, but that is what it is, and that is what's the menu. Now, why is this such a problem is because I've learned that in the last about 12, 13 years, there's been groups of Muslims who have been going there and have started requesting menu changes. So when you look at the menu that I just read out and you do some data on it, 50%, so 7 out of the 14 items that I've listed out are pork derived or pork itself. And when Muslims can't eat pork and they go there, they make demands that 50% of the menu gets altered in order to accommodate them. So let's look at what the problem is here. So Quebec culture is very, very protected by Quebecers. And now you have a specific, like, it's not like it was a dire situation where Muslims couldn't eat anywhere else. Like, Muslims are going to a specifically Quebec event and bringing their demands, their cultural demands, onto the Quebec ones. And when you allow that to happen, when the Quebec Sugar Shack owner says, okay, yeah, we'll accommodate you, what you're doing is you're taking over and giving precedence to whatever values and cultures they come with over your own, within your own element. To me, that's nonsensical. This is why I'm not even mad at the Muslims. I'm mad at the Sugar Shack owners. Like, all of my anger is directed at these Sugar Shack owners who dare to accommodate this. Why would you ever do that? You don't have to eat there if you can't eat it. Like, okay, if you're a diabetic, you would not go to a Sugar Shack, or you would go there and you would eat like one thing and then you'd blow through your sugar allowance for the day, and that would be it, right? But you wouldn't go there if you can't eat the menu. Why do you go there and ask for all these people to change Quebec culture? Sugar Shack is typically Quebec. It is what Quebec has. So to make a demand and then for somebody to accommodate that is infuriating beyond words for me. I don't, see, I'm at a loss of words for words. Now, for you Muslims out there, before you jump all over the comment section and say, but, let me ask you this. This would be the equivalent of me going into your mosque and saying that mosque is a purely Islamic area, right? We agree on that. It's where Muslims go to practice their religion and to pray and to have events there. I don't really know what they do in mosques, but there you go. They have schools, I think, attached to mosques. Anyways, that would be me going there and saying, you know what, my culture doesn't really like it when I take my shoes off. My religion doesn't allow my shoes to come off, so I'm gonna keep my shoes on when I walk throughout your mosque. And also, just so you know, I don't like to be separated from my husband, so I'm going to sit at the front of the mosque with my husband, with all the other men. My culture, we don't segregate men and women. So how would you react? How would you Muslims feel if I did that? First of all, you wouldn't allow it, right? Am I right? Tell me, would you allow me to go into your mosque and to dictate to you some of my cultural background and impose that on you? I'm not actually imposing it on you. I'm just telling me, I'll do it. I'm not saying all the women have to go to the front now. I'm just saying I'll do it, right? Which is the equivalent of what you do when you come to a Sugar Shack and you say, you all don't have to eat the menu. It's just halal for us Muslims. But in a way, it's imposing your thing on a Quebec specific thing, just like I would impose my ideas on a Islamic specific thing. I don't think that would go so very well with Muslims out there. I don't think the imams would be so happy, and the imams and the sheikhs would definitely never accommodate me. So why is this being accommodated in a Sugar Shack? Right? I mean, Muslims, come on. This is what I meant when I said earlier, if you're consistent with your own actions, you would agree with me on this, that a sugar shack should never compromise its own menu to accommodate Muslims, because this is a pure Quebec thing. The idea is that you're supposed to go there and enjoy it, not go there and alter it. Now, I'm gonna take it back. So you might think, okay, well, Julie, what's the big deal? Come on, they're just making that one menu for these Muslims. And then you can still eat your croton and your tourtière and your oreille de Christ when you come to the cabane à sucre. So what the hell is your problem? Why are you complaining about this? Well, unfortunately for me, I understand Islamic history and I understand Islamic doctrine. So that means that I know where this is all headed. Now, this is an imposition of Sharia. Sharia is Islamic law. It is technically translated as the path, and it's the path to perfection. And the goal of Muslims is to impose Sharia wherever they go. This is not me saying this. This is the Prophet saying that. And this is your own Prophet, Muslims, so you know I'm saying the truth. This is why you guys don't even refute me in the comments anymore, because I think you guys already know that I'm saying the truth about your religion. But Prophet Muhammad said that the goal is to create the Ummah, which is the overall arching, every part of the world becomes Islamic. And part of a mandate of being Muslim is to impose Sharia. So when Muslims are in smaller numbers in societies, and this is what's happened across the last 1400 years of Islamic conquest, when they're not in a position to take over the host country, they make smaller demands and they play victimhood. That's the status they're in the Western world, but they are making demands on Sharia on us. So they're not in a ability to overpower us, but they're making small demands to erode slowly at our society. And this is what's happening. So think about this Quebecers who allow the cabane à sucre to be Islamicized. What's going to happen in the future, like if we take worst case scenario where Islam takes over Quebec, what's going to happen is this is how it's going to go down. You're going to have a sugar shack that's going to be roughly near a densely populated Muslim town, right? Like where most Muslims have gone and have kind of created a little Muslim area. Now we see this currently in a lot of UK cities. So don't tell me that can't happen. That's happening right now in the UK, in Belgium, in Denmark, in Sweden. They have little Islamic cities where the population of Muslims is growing and becoming more than the actual local population. So they're going to take over a small city somewhere around, then eventually they're going to buy a sugar shack and they're going to make the entire sugar shack halal. So that means you as a Quebecer now would go to this halal sugar shack. You wouldn't even recognize it. There would be full of foods you don't know. There would not be any croton anymore. They would have taken away the dancing, the music, because under Islam, you are not allowed to listen to music, produce music, play music, sing. You're not allowed to do any of that. And you're not allowed to dance. So, and the sugar shacks will be segregated too. There'll be the section for the women with the entrance for the women, and then there'll be the section for the men with the men's entrance. Imagine that. Imagine that. All of that. Because we have slowly allowed Islamification of our culture. We've committed cultural suicide by allowing them. So this is when you say it's not a big deal that we're giving up, we're a second menu, that we're doing a second menu for the Muslims. It's a huge deal when you understand it within the Islamic jurisprudence and within the Islamic history of what Muslims have done in the past. So, big deal. Big deal. Not to be swept under the carpet. And I wish that the sugar shack owners would just stick to their menu. You say, no, sorry, this is our menu. We don't make a special menu. This is our Quebec tradition. This is our culture. This is what we do. We're not going to compromise that for anybody. This is what we do. You don't like it? Don't come. Oh, I hope that covers it all. Let me just check before I let you guys go. Yep, I think that covers it all. It covers all the points I had. So let me know in the comment section what you guys think about all this. And Muslims, tell me if you agree that Quebec should not compromise its own values, similarly to the way that you do not compromise your values when you come here in Quebec society and are accepted by Quebec society. So there we go. See you guys in the next one.